Your person was introduced to someone new for marriage. Then a secret recording of you was played. My beloved child, stop for one impossible moment, because somewhere, behind a closed door you were never meant to see, your name has just changed the direction of a conversation that everyone believed was already decided. No one expected what happened next. A family had gathered with smiles, careful words, and hopeful expectations. Your person had been introduced to someone new for marriage. Every face around the room carried the confidence that this meeting would become the beginning of a brand new future. Everything looked certain. Every answer sounded perfect. Every plan seemed complete. Until someone quietly said, "Before we move forward, there is something you should hear." The room grew strangely still. Not because of fear. Not because of doubt. But because nobody expected a recording to exist. A recording connected to you. Stay a little longer, because what happened after that moment was nothing like anyone imagined. The device was placed gently onto the table. No dramatic announcement. No explanation. Just silence, the kind of silence that appears before truth walks into a room. Your person didn't even know where to look. Their heartbeat wasn't racing because another proposal was being discussed. It was racing because something inside them whispered, "This isn't over." Then, the recording began. Not with loud words. Not with promises. Not with desperate emotion. Instead, there was honesty. The kind of honesty that doesn't ask to be believed. It simply exists. Every sentence carried quiet strength. Every pause revealed someone who had learned through experience instead of pretending to be perfect. The voice wasn't trying to impress anyone. It wasn't chasing approval. It wasn't asking to be chosen. It simply reflected authenticity. And sometimes, authenticity speaks louder than the loudest performance. Think carefully about this. What if the greatest impression you ever leave isn't created when people are watching, but when they unexpectedly discover who you are without knowing you're being heard? That possibility alone changes everything. Wait before you decide this story is predictable. Because this was never about competing with another person. It was about something much deeper. As the recording continued, every expectation inside that room slowly began to shift. The conversation that had once centered around appearances began revolving around character. The questions that once focused on status started focusing on values. Without realizing it, everyone listening had stopped evaluating introductions and started reflecting on integrity. Your person couldn't explain why, but every sentence they heard awakened memories they had quietly carried for longer than they admitted. Not memories of specific moments, but memories of how certain people make you feel long after the conversation ends. Some voices disappear. Others remain. Yours seemed impossible to forget. What if this moment isn't about someone choosing between two different futures? What if it's about finally recognizing which future already feels true? Pause with that thought. Because answers revealed too quickly rarely change lives. Answers discovered slowly. have the power to transform them. Before the recording reached its final minute, something unexpected happened. Nobody interrupted. Nobody checked their phone. Nobody rushed toward another topic. Even those who believed the meeting had already reached its conclusion leaned forward without realizing it. The atmosphere itself had changed. Not because of dramatic words, but because genuine truth carries a quiet weight that cannot be imitated. And your person. They weren't looking at anyone anymore. They were staring into the distance. As if the recording wasn't simply being played. As if it was awakening something they had tried to ignore for far too long. Stay until the end of this journey. Because what happened after that recording stopped was the one response no one in that room had prepared for. And that single response would quietly begin rewriting everything they believed about destiny, timing, and the extraordinary connection they thought they had almost left behind. Part 2. Now listen closely, because the silence that followed carried more meaning than the recording itself. Nobody spoke. Nobody rushed to fill the room with polite conversation. It was as though every person present was waiting for someone else to explain what they had just felt. Yet no explanation came, because some moments are understood by the heart long before the mind can give them words. Your person slowly lowered their eyes. Not out of uncertainty, but because the recording had awakened something they had spent a long time trying to bury beneath logic and expectations. The family who had arranged the introduction exchanged quiet glances. The smiles that had filled the room only moments before had softened into thoughtful expressions. They were no longer comparing names or appearances. They were wondering why a voice they had never expected to hear had left such a lasting impression. Stay with this story, because the next few moments reveal something most people overlook. The recording never claimed to be extraordinary. It never asked anyone to make a decision. Instead, it spoke about perseverance, about choosing kindness even when no reward was guaranteed, about believing that the right connections are built through patience rather than pressure. Every sentence sounded simple. Yet every sentence lingered. That is the strange power of sincerity. It doesn't demand attention. It quietly earns it. Your person closed their eyes for a brief moment. Inside, memories began connecting like pieces of a puzzle. Conversations once forgotten suddenly became meaningful. Small moments that seemed ordinary now appeared unforgettable. A smile. A thoughtful word. A calm presence during difficult days. Things they had once considered insignificant suddenly felt priceless. What if the greatest influence you ever have on someone's life comes from the moments you never realized they remembered? Hold on to that question. Because it may explain more than this story ever could. Then someone finally broke the silence. Instead of asking about the proposal, instead of discussing marriage, they quietly asked, "Who is the person in this recording?" The question echoed through the room. Not because everyone lacked the answer, but because everyone wanted to hear your person's answer. Your person looked toward the device resting on the table. For several seconds. Nothing. Only a thoughtful smile that seemed impossible to hide. Sometimes the strongest answer isn't spoken immediately. Sometimes it arrives through expression before words. Before you continue this journey, if this story has touched something deep inside you, consider sharing it with someone who believes meaningful stories still exist. And if you're enjoying this experience, a comment or subscription helps these stories reach others searching for hope and purpose. Then came another unexpected moment. Your person finally spoke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just one calm sentence. Some voices stay with you because they remind you of the person you're becoming. Nobody expected that answer. The room became even quieter. The new introduction was no longer the center of attention. The recording had shifted everyone's focus toward something far greater than first impressions. Toward authenticity. Toward character. Toward the quiet strength that cannot be rehearsed. Wait a little longer. Because someone in that room was about to reveal a hidden detail about the recording itself, a detail so unexpected that your person would realize this meeting had never been as ordinary as it first appeared. And when that truth comes to light, everything that seemed like coincidence will begin to look like perfect timing. Before you decide, you already know where this story is going. Remain here for one more moment. Because the next revelation did not arrive with excitement or celebration. It arrived quietly, like a single key turning inside a lock that had remained closed for years. Everyone's attention returned to the small device resting on the table. Then an older family member gently reached toward it and smiled. "There is something else you should know." The words were soft. Yet they immediately changed the atmosphere. Your person looked up with quiet curiosity. "What do you mean?" The reply came without hesitation. This recording wasn't selected by accident. The room became perfectly still. No one interrupted. No one even shifted in their seat. Every heartbeat seemed to be waiting for the next sentence. Stay with this moment, because what you're about to hear explains why destiny sometimes works through the most ordinary situations. The older voice continued. "We've listened to many conversations over the past few weeks. Different stories. Different people. Different introductions. A brief pause. But this was the only recording that made everyone stop talking." Your person's expression slowly changed. Not because they expected praise, but because they couldn't understand why your voice had affected complete strangers so deeply. What made it different? It wasn't confidence. It wasn't perfect words. It wasn't a dramatic promise about the future. It was something much quieter. Every sentence carried peace. Every thought reflected maturity. Every pause showed someone who understood that real strength isn't found in speaking the loudest. It's found in remaining genuine when nobody is asking you to perform. Think about that for a second. How many people spend their lives trying to be noticed, while the people who leave the deepest mark simply choose to be real? That realization alone can change the direction of an entire life. Your person quietly remembered another moment. A conversation from long ago. At the time, it had seemed ordinary. Now it felt completely different. They realized something unexpected. You had never tried to convince anyone to admire you. You simply spoke from your heart. And perhaps that was exactly why your words had never been forgotten. Then someone asked a question that no one expected. If another opportunity appeared tomorrow, would your answer still be the same? Every eye turned toward your person. There was no pressure, no expectation, only curiosity. Your person took a slow breath, looked once more at the recording device, then answered with calm certainty. Some people enter your life for a season, but others quietly become part of your future before you even recognize it. Silence. Not uncomfortable silence. Peaceful silence. The kind that appears when truth settles gently into every heart in the room. No one argued. No one laughed. Instead, thoughtful smiles began appearing one by one. It was as if everyone suddenly understood that meaningful connections cannot be measured by appearances or perfect introductions. They are revealed through consistency, character, and the quiet influence someone leaves behind. Stay until the next part. Because the meeting everyone believed was leading toward one decision was about to take a completely unexpected turn. A single question would be asked. One honest answer would follow. And that answer would leave every person in the room looking at your person in a way they never had before. Just when everyone believed the conversation had reached its conclusion, an unexpected question quietly changed everything. The room remained calm, yet every person seemed to sense that something meaningful was still waiting to be revealed. Your person looked toward the family member who had played the recording. "What made you choose that voice?" they finally asked. A gentle smile appeared. It wasn't because of who the recording belonged to. A brief pause. It was because of what it reminded us of. Nobody spoke. The silence invited reflection instead of answers. The older family member continued. In a world where people often try to impress each other, this voice wasn't trying to win anyone over. It spoke with honesty, patience, and quiet confidence. Those qualities are harder to find than people realize. Your person lowered their gaze, replaying every word they had just heard. Sometimes, the strongest message isn't the loudest one. Sometimes, it simply arrives at the right moment. Wait a little longer. Because the next few minutes would reveal something no one had considered before. One of the guests leaned forward and asked, "If someone leaves this kind of impression without even being present, what does that tell us?" The question lingered in the room. No one rushed to answer. Instead, everyone reflected. Perhaps people are remembered less for perfect introductions, and more for the character they consistently show. Your person smiled quietly. Not because every answer had suddenly become clear, but because they realized that meaningful decisions deserve thoughtful reflection rather than hurried conclusions. Before this story continues, if you've enjoyed following this fictional journey, consider sharing it with someone who enjoys uplifting stories. And if you'd like to see more storytelling like this, subscribing helps you find future chapters. The conversation gradually shifted away from comparison. No one discussed who looked more successful. No one argued about first impressions. Instead, they talked about trust, about kindness, about the kind of person who remains steady when life becomes uncertain. As the evening drew to a close, the family member carefully picked up the recording device. "There is one final detail," they said with a thoughtful smile. "This recording has another ending." Your person's eyes widened slightly. "Another ending?" "Yes. We stopped it early tonight." The room became perfectly still once again. No one expected there was more to hear. And whatever those final moments contained, they would become the reason everyone agreed to meet one more time before making any life-changing decision. The next chapter begins with that final minute of the recording, a minute that no one in the room had heard, until now. One final minute, that was all anyone had left to hear. Yet somehow, everyone in the room felt that those remaining seconds carried more weight than everything that had come before. The recording device rested quietly in the older family member's hands. No one hurried them. No one spoke. Even the smallest sound in the room seemed to disappear. Then, the recording resumed. For a few moments, there was only silence inside the audio itself. Not empty silence. Intentional silence. The kind that allows every listener to reflect before the next words arrive. Then the voice continued. "Life has a way of placing us at unexpected crossroads. When that moment comes, don't choose the path that looks perfect. Choose the one that helps you become the person you're proud to be." The words were simple. Yet they settled into every heart in the room. Your person slowly closed their eyes. Those weren't just sentences anymore. They felt like a mirror. A reminder that every important decision is shaped not only by opportunity, but by character. Stay with this story. Because the next realization changed the evening in a way no one could have predicted. Another sentence followed. The right people never ask you to become someone else. They inspire you to become more of who you truly are. This time, no one looked at the recording. Everyone looked at your person. Not because they expected an answer, but because they could see quiet understanding written across their face. There was no dramatic reaction. No emotional speech. Only a calm smile that revealed something had finally become clear. One guest finally broke the silence. "I think we've been asking the wrong question all evening." Curious eyes turned toward them. "We kept asking who should be chosen." A thoughtful pause. "But perhaps the better question is, which future reflects the values we want to build?" The room nodded in quiet agreement. For the first time that evening, the discussion was no longer about comparing people. It had become a conversation about wisdom, trust, patience, and the kind of relationships that grow stronger over time. Your person looked out the nearby window. The sky had begun to change with the fading light. Sometimes, endings don't arrive with loud applause. Sometimes, they arrive with quiet clarity. Before this fictional journey continues, thank you for staying until this moment. If these stories encourage thoughtful reflection, sharing your thoughts in the comments and subscribing helps this series continue reaching others who enjoy meaningful storytelling. As everyone prepared to leave, the older family member carefully placed the recording device back into its case. With a gentle smile, they said one final sentence. This recording didn't tell us what decision to make. It reminded us what kind of people we want to be before making one. Those words stayed with everyone as the evening came to a close. But just as your person stepped toward the door, a phone vibrated softly. A new message had arrived. No name. No explanation. Just a single line. The story you heard tonight was only the beginning. And in that instant, your person realized that the next chapter would reveal a truth no one had expected. One that would reshape every assumption they had carried into that unforgettable evening. Just when it seemed the evening had finally come to an end, that mysterious message refused to let anyone walk away unchanged. Your person paused before opening the door. The room behind them had grown quiet again, yet something invisible seemed to be pulling them back. They looked at the screen once more. Only one sentence. The story you heard tonight was only the beginning. No sender. No photograph. No explanation. Only curiosity. And sometimes, curiosity is the first step toward discovering a truth that has been waiting patiently all along. Stay with this journey. The next few moments are not about coincidence. They are about perspective. Your person slowly turned around. The family members noticed the thoughtful expression on their face. What happened? Someone asked gently. Instead of showing the message immediately, your person simply smiled. Has anyone else received something like this before? The question surprised everyone. Heads quietly shook from side to side. No. The answer came almost in unison. For a brief moment, nobody knew what to think. Was it a mistake? A delayed message? Or simply a reminder arriving at exactly the right time? No one could be certain. The older family member stepped closer and spoke with calm wisdom. Sometimes life doesn't answer every question immediately. It simply gives us enough to keep moving forward. Those words settled into the room like the final note of a beautiful melody. Your person looked outside. The evening breeze carried a quiet sense of possibility. Not because everything had suddenly become clear, but because uncertainty no longer felt frightening. It felt meaningful. Think about this. How often do people search for perfect certainty? While the most important chapters of life begin with just one small reason to keep walking? Perhaps the greatest turning points never announce themselves. They arrive quietly.